Hello and welcome to the show. This is Everything Under the Sun. My name's Ty. Hope you're all doing truly fantastic today. I am very pleased to be joined here with Myrissa. She is going to talk to us some about her integrative health past and experience, and also what she does now, elemental integration, which is something I'm pretty fascinated to know about. So, Myrissa, thank you for being here.
Yay, thanks, Ty. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. Looking forward to sharing more.
Awesome. So I guess you said you had a background in integrative health.
Yeah.
So like, what is integrative health?
Yeah, for sure. A lot of people ask that, so it makes sense. So I got into, I'd say, like true medicine, or whole person holistic medicine about 7 years ago. And I had just kind of gotten fed up with the allopathic Western mindset and way of medicine. And I was taking a science class, ethnobotany, which was the study of cultures and how they use plants as medicine. And it totally opened up a whole world to me that like nature can heal and there's different systems of medicine throughout the world that have been used that help people actually. So that brought me to discover the university that I went to, which is National University of Natural Medicine in Portland, Oregon. And that's the oldest accredited naturopathic medicine school in the country. And there I got my pre-medical sciences and then also took classes in herbalism and qigong and Chinese medicine, somatic practices. So it's like a very integrative degree. So that's my Bachelor's of Science in Integrative Health Sciences.
Very cool. Portland, just Oregon in general, it seems to be like leading the kind of alternative medicines type of genre where it's like started with I think Oregon was like one of the first to decriminalize cannabis as well as ayahuasca and psilocybin in the last like not even like 10 years. And I feel like that's something so progressive where it's like people are starting to utilize plant medicines and other things to help with healing. And I think that's something huge.
Yeah, it's a interesting point you bring up there, and specifically like Oregon, as far as the archaic revival is basically what I call this like psychedelic renaissance that we're having. They moved to legalize it, and then there were a lot of other states that moved into like the decriminalized world, and it's also decriminalized in Oregon. And so they have like this interesting perspectives that are going on specifically in Oregon that are just kind of these two different viewpoints on this archaic revival of what we're going through right now. So it's just interesting you say that. Yeah, Oregon's a fascinating state to really be watching as we're going through and learning a lot about psychedelics as medicine and where they're going to fit into our society.
Yeah, I think that's it's insane. I was in Northern California before I moved here. I kind of briefly mentioned I was in California and it was about an hour from the Oregon border. So it was also like a very small town. It was I know Portland's like pretty big, but I know that in places like that are so isolated where it's like, Portland is like kind of in the middle. There's an airport, but it's like there's a lot of forestry, there's a lot of just state there. And people don't really hear like the research and the things, the experiences that people are having in those places, like new modalities. Like, have you noticed like ways of healing while you were there in Oregon, or just like by following what's happening in Oregon that are different from what other people are experiencing in the world?
Definitely. The education that I got and at the school I got, I was so inspired by the doctors that I met. It was just like a really amazing doctor is also like a sleuth of sorts. And I just was so inspired, and it was a different way of looking at healing the whole person, like taking into account more of the spiritual self and how important our connection of nature is. Like I think about doctors Mitch and Lori Stargrove, and they invited me to this cascade fire, and I didn't know what it was about, but I went. But I had to get like 4 days off of school, and I didn't know it was like a week-long thing when I go. I think it's just like a weekend, but then it was like 2 days after. It was like 5 days, and so they're just like, just tell your teachers, you're doing this with Doctors Lori and Mitch Dargrove. I'm like, okay, if that's what you say, like, I'm gonna email them and tell them I have to miss days of school for this. But we were like all in this experience together on the coast of Oregon, circumambulating, like walking around a fire like all night. And
Wow.
yeah, it was a really wild experience, but like that had such profound like healing on me. And I like to bring up that example because it opens up another way of thinking about medicine and healing.
Right.
So that's just one example of some of the amazing experiences I got to see, and be inspired by like doctors who truly want to see people get well and heal, and not just focusing on one area of the body, or getting into that quick fix mindset of like medicine and surgeries, which has its place. Like, I don't like to be negative on biomedicine and allopathic medicine because it has so much for our society and does so much. I just have to speak to that there's a lot of people and great doctors advocating for different ways of taking care of our bodies and ourselves, and we have to like not forget that we have a lot more tools, and the body's amazing at healing itself. And going and walking around a fire for a week can bring a lot of healing, which you don't think about.
Yeah, I mean, even just picturing that in my own mind, I don't know what healing came from it, but I recognize, like, just from your energy, from speaking about it, I'm like, this is a significant experience. And I think that's something so profound for us to understand while we're on the healing journey as well. It's like when we go through certain experiences, sometimes it speaks to the individual about like what this healing is doing, like how it's healing and like how it's moving us to that next place that we want to be. And somehow like we find ourselves aligned with those experiences, that those opportunities that offer us a way of healing that's maybe different than what we've been told or how we've been like introduced to before.
Yeah, exactly. And I'd say that was the biggest like healing that I got from that. Was it was all so different to me, and like bringing me out of what would be like a normal experience. And that alone, I was just kind of going along for the ride and observing. And a lot of people waited all year to come to that. And like when you're walking around the fire, people like released a lot of stuff. They talk about people that had passed away, and there's a lot of healing, and it comes from just removing ourselves from this like day-to-day, day in day out society, or like everything we've become familiar with. Or at least that's what I felt like I got from it, was whoa, like there's a lot more out there. I don't know.
There
If
is.
that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think that's something symbolic. I thought about this idea, well, this experience that I went through. I was in California. There's a Buddhist monastery in Ukiah, and it's called a Temple of 1,000 Buddhas. And part of the prayer that we did, we started around this temple, and we started in prayer, like on our knees praying, and then we stood up and then started walking around, all of us, just like in this circle. And they were speaking about how the circle kind of is symbolic of life in many ways, where it's like we find ourselves in various habitual circles, but it doesn't mean that the experience is the same. Like every time we walked around, it's like it was the same room, we were doing the same thing, but the experience was different every time we went around in that circle. So it was like it was just kind of speaking about how life, and how sometimes we feel like we can be moving in a circle, but we are progressively moving forward towards the things that we desire. It's just like it just kind of feels that way, like that cyclical movement, the continuation of life, so to speak.
Yeah. Wow. Amazing. I love thinking about that. And circles have been coming up a lot kind of for me recently, and like thinking about how circles are so profound, and like sitting around in a circle sharing about your experiences. And like we would sit in circles around fires, and there's a lot of like cultures that have this sitting in a circle and sharing type of structure. And yeah, one of the things that I'm bringing out here in Maui right now is the integration circles and into greatness circles. And I've found it like very profound just to sit in a circle with people and discuss your experience.
I like that, into greatness.
Yeah.
Inner
Yeah.
greatness. That's awesome.
Uh-huh.
So all of that is just like culminates your experience of doing the elemental integration.
Yeah, totally. So when I was in school, I went to school in Portland from 2017 to 2020. I started volunteering for the Oregon Psilocybin Society in 2018. I think it was like me and one other person was on the original like volunteer team to get the 10,000 signatures to get it onto the ballot for the state to vote. And so that was like all happening, and that was right around when Michael Pollan's book came out as well, How to Change Your Mind. And it was just a whole, our society kind of started shifting from being like, these Schedule One substances are like, will make your brain scramble, to being like, whoa, like there's some really powerful research that's going on about this. There's also like public figures speaking about it in a way to put language around it so people can start to not have maybe like associate it directly with fear or whatever. So I got really interested in research and helping out with that movement as well. And that was kind of the path that I thought that I was going to be taking. And then I started working with one of my teachers to hold space for people while they were on a journey. And after some of these things kind of happened my final year in school, when I returned from a healing and artist residency in Guatemala, I thought I was going to be going into research, and then the universe kind of had a different plan for me. And my teacher at that time then like passed away in a motorcycle accident. But I like to think about the mushrooms specifically as like this mycelial network of people, and they like bring people into your life where it's needed, I guess. And so I had another teacher that came into my life and taught me a lot about holding space, and really coming from like more of a Native American perspective, I would say. He learned a lot from Lakota tribe and people. So that was his background. It was the first time I came out to Maui. And so, as I was working one on one with people, that's what I was getting at. Instead of research, I decided like my passion was people. I wanted to take my formal education to develop wellness programs for people, and then also have a bit of like my creative spirit and do these workshops and some of the other things. And through that process, the psychedelics were always in the back of my awareness or my field, and kind of like keeping a pulse on what is growing and what is becoming. And I learned that the psychedelics are still only a catalyst for ourselves, and shifting that perspective to remember that we are our own best teachers and healers, and our medicine comes from within. So instead of saying, hey, I will give you mushrooms or ayahuasca, I'm pivoting the conversation to bring more of the integration process to the forefront. And that has led me to develop this blueprint called elemental integration. And it's exactly what it sounds like, each element, and then also integrating a psychedelic experience. But it's, you don't have to have had a psychedelic experience or even want to go into a psychedelic experience. It's more developing a connection to yourself and empowerment and confidence in yourself. And if and when you do want to experience a psychedelic, maybe you have a lot of fear around it, or whatever beliefs, challenges are coming up, you have a strong foundation, like an anchor to support you in those spaces. And so I've practiced it a lot of times personally and now with clients, and the results have been really promising, and I'm just excited to continue sharing it for people that are interested.
That's incredible. I mean, there are a few things within that, like just having that foundation that's so grounded, because I know sometimes with psychedelics, people can kind of forget their own beingness, their own like I think being grounded in yourself and knowing in yourself is something that's so important, and taking those experiences or doing those experiences, because you come so out of body, you come so out of that context that we're used to, that if there's nothing else to kind of give you some kind of structure, I think it can kind of go off the rails in some ways. And
Yeah, exactly. And through my journeys and travels, I ran into that kind of a lot with people just I don't know. It's almost like, it sounds a little harsh to say, but like going and doing like 60 ayahuasca ceremonies is not like the way to spirituality or whatever. And I've met plumbers that are super spiritual that are like, I think there's a like, I don't exactly, I'm still sussing that out, but kind of a culture of spirituality that people can get kind of like looped into. And it's the same thing mindset we have around healing in general, of this like quick fix mindset, that this one psychedelic, this one surgery, this one prescription is going to heal me or cure me, when really this is a deep journey and like that cyclical like circle of life that we're going through, and it's not really a destination, it's just the journey and continuing on. And
It's really like a discovery of self, like a more of an
mm,
understanding of self.
yeah, exactly. And so if you do have a bit more of that anchoring and structure, it becomes a lot more clear as well too. And it is almost like you just, yeah, you get to have a connection to yourself more, like learn about yourself more.
I had an experience I spoke about with the last guest, and I hadn't spoke about it before that, and this podcast has been like 3 years now, but
Hmm.
it was a psychedelic experience that I was taking, so I took psilocybin mushrooms and had this experience that was so profound, it changed my life radically as far as just like the understanding of, our beingness and oneness and just like all this, like very, very expansive. And it did take a lot to kind of like bring me back to this like experience. And what I learned from it was that that's always who we are. It's always who we are. And we don't need the psychedelics in order to access that. And that was the biggest thing that I learned. And I was speaking to a friend about it, and he was like, yeah, there's a lot of people that started doing psychedelics in the beginning. When they were introducing it to people, they were saying, it's like once you get the message, then you can.
Hang up the phone. Yeah, Terrence McKenna said that. Yeah, yeah.
So it's really something that's so, I mean, it's so real, because like there is this culture even here on Maui where it's like a big spiritual community, where it's ayahuasca ceremonies happening all the time. I've had a friend that was like, yeah, I did like 5 ayahuasca ceremonies in the past few months. I'm like, don't people cleanse themselves for like weeks on end just to have one experience? And it's for that to be repeated. I mean, like everyone do what they feel they need to do for
Right.
themselves, but
Yeah,
there is
absolutely.
that realization that I think we all could come to, is that like the truth is always within us. We are our
Yeah.
best teacher, as you were saying.
Yeah, exactly. And it just makes me curious, sort of like we're wanting to re-experience like something that we feel are getting, but when you have that like realization like you had, that this can be like, this exists somewhere inside me all the time,
Mhm.
that there's like some really profound there. And a part of that's what's like inspired these circles is just like the word integration. Like I feel like if you are going to be exploring psychedelics, just make sure that you have that integration piece being discussed and talked about, or in some way, in some form, because that's like really where work comes into place, is like how are these experiences going to integrate into your relationships and your life to create sustainable change of like what you want to achieve in your goals or personal life. How is that impacting you?
Is that what you kind of like go through when you speak to someone, when you're like doing 101? You're like, what are you here for? Like, what is.
Yeah, for sure. Like, what brings you joy? What do you feel like is your purpose, like your passions? What do you feel like are some challenges that you have?
Are there like common, like, do you recognize like a certain type of people that come to you, like as far as they have certain type of question, they like have something on their mind that they feel as though like they're drawn to you for that reason, or is it just like anyone for different parts of life?
Yeah, it was really interesting. And like right now, I am in a bit of like a transition time. But for the past 2 years, 90% of my clients have actually been men. And it's like there's this feminine rising of the goddess energy empowerment, which I'm totally on board, obviously. With all of that, I just felt that in the beginning, in the first year of my business and working with people, there were both men and women coming to me. And I saw, though, when I worked with men, there was a major transformation that was taking place of this transformative medicine. And there's a lot of support for women. and I just felt like there was a bit more of a gap. And so I basically said, yeah, like I work primarily with men. And it's almost like even though I'm a woman, there's a counterbalance of energy that occurs that is a nurturing force that allows a safe and supportive container or environment to take place so that a man who may not have been in touch with his emotions or had a space to express certain parts of himself, which is becoming more common, but it's rare in our society. Then they have that, they can do that, and I feel like growing, building, like supporting strong men can have a great impact on your personal sphere and then beyond into the world. And these men that were coming to me, it's like they had maybe had gone to like a sound bath or a yoga class, like they had some sort of profound experience or a music festival that started to wake them up to their guardian genius or their higher self or their spiritual self, and they aren't quite like don't have any language developing about like spiritualism and discovering about themselves, but then they also are kind of in a space of wondering and looking for some guidance around healing and connecting with nature and how it can support themselves.
I'm guessing you're more like individual basis, like what they're coming there for, then like you incorporate something around that. Like you don't
Yeah.
have like a structure of like how you.
Yeah, exactly. So even though each person's experience is unique and different, there's common themes that I bring through to support the individual.
And I guess what's like the outcome like when you're working with someone, like what is the goal that you're kind of wanting to send them off and say go into the world.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like it's being confident and grounded in your energy to feel like you can go into like any place in the world or have any relationship or conversation with whoever it is, and you're in your center and you're confident in your energy. And then also just improved relationships. Like one of the results of this work is being able to like know your worth and know how to communicate with your loved ones, and then also knowing and trusting yourself to grow if like relationships aren't aligning, I guess. So those have been some of the biggest like results that I've seen with people, as well as just like moving through stagnation or depression, difficulties sleeping, like some of these other symptoms of society or whatever they're struggling with. But I think that on a larger scale, bigger picture is being confident in your energy to show up wherever with whoever that you want to, and then also healing relationships and having thriving relationships.
I think I think that's something so big with the foundation that you were speaking about, is was like having that secure foundation. It's like you can go out into the world, you can go into the city. You don't have to be like in your temple in your own space to keep your peace or to keep your, well-being. You can like go out and have these relationships and feel confident in doing that, because I think there's so much like insecurity in being authentic. And I think that that's something that this transition is also moving towards, like the authenticity that we all feel within. And I think that's what causes the distress that we feel. I feel like men know that there's, they want to express emotion a little bit more, and I think it's just constantly being repressed of that and being told that like you shouldn't be able to express that or you shouldn't express that has made it like something like it's an insecurity now. It's like this feeling is something like I need to step away, but it becomes so strong that you have to let it go, and you have to find a meaningful way of organizing that and utilizing that energy, and maybe even transmuting that energy to something that's more beneficial.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where the question comes up of like what does bring you the most joy. And I feel like we have unique gifts and skills that are waiting for us to interlock or unlock it within to contribute to the up leveling of humanity and consciousness in general. And so when we go into those spaces, like the parts of ourselves we don't maybe want to look at or don't want to express, when we do that and little by little we break out of that walls that we've put up for ourselves, we grow like our muscles. And I feel like that's what like will really be changing the world and how we can live our dreams.
That's like incredible. I was just thinking the other day, actually I think it was last night, it was I've had a lot of conversations since I've been on Maui in the last 2 years about past life.
Mm.
A lot of people that feel as though they're dealing with past life traumas, past life experiences, and I was just thinking how I was like so often like if I thought about something, and I used to think about like karma and things that I've carried into this life, and I realized in those thoughts I felt kind of that I was succumbing like to the effects of it. Like I had no power over it, and it seemed as though like thinking about something being in a past life, it took away the ability for me to do something right now with it, as far as just like what my belief was. And I'm wondering, like with your work, have you done past life work where it's like you've kind of brought people to build a foundation around like that kind of experience that they feel like they've been carrying?
Yeah, I've had some interesting experiences personally around that. And so I am of the belief, and again, this is just from my experience, that we have had lives here before. And we come in with specific energies, whether it's going to be our gifts or it's going to be like what we have to work through. And this is where I like to get into like energetic medicine. Like energy medicine has come down to be different frequencies of light medicine for people. And so when I have guided people through different experiences with that, I think though there's a lot of power that can be done to release, rewrite, move through because of the power of the now moment though. And our awareness, our thoughts, our minds can be a powerful tool to go back, bring our awareness, our attention to some place. And like I do, this is the power of a guide too. I explain it as rock climbing a lot, because if you are free climbing, you're only going to go up 6, 7 feet. And if you are rock climbing with a partner or somebody who's holding the rope for you, you feel a lot more confident to climb into a higher place or a deeper part of your psyche. And so when you feel like you have a rope, you can go into a past life, for example, or into your mother's like lineage, and having it come up in your intuition. And like that's also another thing that I share, is that like we're a lot more powerful than we give ourselves credit, and a lot more connected. And we're in this like connection crisis in society right now. So we're reconnecting. So trusting that intuition that comes up, even if you're like, this doesn't make any sense. This was my mom's sister's, this thing happened. It's interesting. And when you're going through the guided session, or the experience, then that comes up. But then what brings it back is like being able to bring a gold ray of light in and clear energy and release it, is because of our groundedness in the present moment. And so it's kind of long-winded, but I feel like that victim mentality, that this past life is affecting me, or like why I have these habits and stuff, can be challenged by saying that everything also can exist in this now moment, and your power is in this moment, and you get to decide the relationship that you have with whatever that thought was, or whatever your intuition's telling you about, if that makes sense.
No, it makes complete sense. And
Okay.
and something I was listening to, it was speaking about past lives, and I fully believe in past lives. We have certainly lived many lives. And with that, I realized that there are certain things that we carry, but I guess it was really that power piece of like bringing it into the now moment, and realizing that. And something I was listening to was speaking about how we oftentimes believe something to be in a past life or even in the past of this life, and we're carrying it right now, we're feeling it right now, and therefore it is right now. Yeah. It's like we bring it to this now moment. Right. And with that, a lot of times like we dissociate that. We were like, I'm feeling this right now, but this is from a past life. And it's like we haven't brought those two together to say like, I'm bringing that experience with me right now, and this is the moment where I can heal it too. Yeah. And it's like I think that's something so profound, and I'm sure like, I mean, that's just like in itself something that's so healing in the work that you do.
Yeah, exactly. And I think taking that full like responsibility over it of this is real for me, and also what do I want to do with it. And I've seen like that radical responsibility is looking at it almost doesn't give it as much power. It can dissolve it as well too, or like just recognizing that, okay, I feel like I have this from a past life, that's freeing in itself type of thing.
It's like switching up the narrative a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. And like I love words, like who doesn't? The in the middle of belief is the word lie.
Yeah. Wow.
So it's like our beliefs can be lies that we've told ourselves.
Yeah. Beliefs are just things we keep thinking.
Yeah.
I fully believe that. And yeah, it's like changing those beliefs. I think that that's something so hard for many people because we believe them to be real.
Yeah.
But it's just because we've been training ourselves to believe that. So it's just like, I think even realizing that our own beliefs have been created by ourselves, and it's like, oh, wait a minute, I can create new ones.
Yeah, exactly. And this is where the power of these fungi and plant allies come into place, because sometimes we just have the blinders on and we can only see like in front of our face, our mirror, our hand is like right there. But when we take these powerful substances, there are catalysts to access more of us or deeper parts of ourselves to see more clearly, to see, oh, there's unification. Then there's a lot of experiences that people have of going back into past lives, healing things. And this is where it's like, I won't even claim to try to understand or grasp. And I think that it is in those moments, though, is why, like right now, the psychedelic world is going through an interesting time, because we have Western medicine, and then we also have these cultures that have used these plants and fungi allies in their societies and their cultures for hundreds of thousands of years. And so it's not going to be that just Western medicine can like put these powerful substances into like the regular Western medical system that is here. We're having to create a whole other branch basically of medicine that combines also that profound spiritual side of these medicines. And so it's like we're developing this like psyche spiritual branch.
Yeah. It's like a whole new area of healing.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's not just a biological experience, physiological, it's not just mental, it's not just spiritual. It's like all of them connected that you go through. So
Yeah, I don't know. I think that's something so important. I think that we spoke about that in the last episode that I was doing with the guest, just about pharmaceutical medications and how, there may be a lot of side effects to that, but there are also a lot of people here today that wouldn't be without that. So it's like we can't discount that there are people with a lot of maybe mental health things going on, like schizophrenia or very deep depression, that some medications kind of help them to get to a place where they're even willing to seek help, or they're willing to kind of explore these other modalities. So I think that they can even be a gateway to like helping people get to a place where they're well enough to search for other alternatives. Yeah. But like when we're in pain, or when we're like suffering, it's like there is that desire to like want something to ameliorate that. Yeah. And I think that like if there are other medicines or other modalities that don't seem to be fitting with us, like with the mindset that we're in that moment, then I think that like utilizing whatever tools that we can to get us to that place is like the best thing that we can do.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. And everyone's journey is different, and so whatever works for you like works for you. Yeah. And I think that it's an exciting time to be open to conversations within the psychedelic medicine world, and just however people come into this, because we have the opportunity to have a full team of medical doctors, and then we also have people like me that can come in to support you in your integration process, to be more a bit on like supporting your spiritual health and well-being as well. So this bridge can come together to hopefully support people in thriving and releasing just a lot of the stuff that is heavy that we don't want to carry around anymore.
Yeah, I think that I'm just thankful for all the different healers that are coming out, all the different people that are recognizing that they want to do this kind of work, whether it's through like their own personal life experiences that have led them to that route. But either way, it's like full passion towards wanting to do that. And I did my master's in counseling, marriage, and family therapy, and I realized that that is something so healing for people to like do therapy in that kind of way. But just as you were saying, you went through school and like there are certain experiences that led you to a different route. I kind of feel as though like my education, very thankful for it, and I will utilize that always. But there are other ways which I feel that they're more well-rounded ways of healing that I just want to be a part of. That I want to like be on the ground floor of like this branching out into this new realm of exploring what can heal me, like what ways can I heal, what ways can meditation or energetic healing or just like whatever this is, like I want to try it and I want to see what this is about.
Yeah.
Because people come to healing with these modalities and it's like it's something to pay attention to.
Yeah.
It's truly miraculous. I think that this world is magical and like there are so many magical things that are in this world, and if we like just open our eyes to it and accept it or allow it.
Exactly. And that's what's the fun of it, and bringing like play into healing and like celebration as ceremony has been a super profound reminder, I guess, as we take ourselves so seriously, and being curious to play of like, oh, I want to, I've never done a sound bath, like I want to do that, or I've never heard of this type of movement practice, like I want to explore that. And you're just exploring, and then you find things that work for you. And I see those as like a casting a fishing net, and when times get tough or something in life happens, because it always will, you have what you like and what resonates with you to support you in your process, in hopes of, if you've gone down into deep dark depressions, of not being there, or have anxiety, or don't necessarily have to, if you're working on like lowering your prescription, if you have a prescription. And those are some of the ideals the hopefulness that some of these like natural practices can bring to light. And I see older generations just in the Western medical system, and it's just pretty sad to watch. And I feel like you and I's generation, and then younger even generation, are saying, well, there has to be something better to do, like breath work, like
Yeah.
ice baths, like infrared sauna, like cryotherapy, like laser, like
So many options.
yeah. And so that's refreshing to see, but I also know that it's new.
Yeah.
It's still innovative for sure.
And with that brings fear, naturally.
Yeah.
People that haven't experienced it or done that.
Yeah, exactly. And whenever you do something new, there's going to be a little bit of that fear. And yeah, there's this book called Pronoia. It's like the opposite of paranoia. It's really interesting, but it's basically encouraging the shifts that everything in the universe is like scary and fearful, and to like everything in the universe is love and is here for you. And I think about that, like you were saying, it's like this world of magic, and like the universe is filled with magic all the time. It's just, are we open to receiving that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think about this like in the way of just with psychedelics, we were talking about how it kind of expands us. I think it kind of breaks down those barriers that we kind of put ourselves in. We put ourselves in like a box of this is what reality is. And when we take psychedelics, it breaks down those barriers. But I think that if we just break down the barriers in our lives by breaking down those beliefs, like expanding like what we're venturing out to see, like what we're doing, it's doing that same thing. And I think it can lead us to that same place.
Yeah, I'm glad that you say that, because that's how I feel there can be, on an even grander scale, that psychedelics and people who choose to use psychedelics in a healing way, in an intentional way, can bring levels of impact, because the world is filled with separation and oppression, and perhaps by releasing our own oppression and separation in ourselves, that can ripple outwards. And like something that I would love to bring to Hawaii that I'm going to be speaking with my friend Travis Fluke about, who headed the Decriminalized Denver in Colorado, is to decriminalize plant medicines and psilocybin here in Hawaii. And it's like a different culture. So I'm going to do surveys and learn, but I think it's just that time in the world and in society that it's like a split of 50-50. And so we'll just kind of see how it goes for the people. But I think that there is something there that can help reinvigorate the Hawaiian culture as well, because they're like going through that. And then you and I here as guests basically, but guests who have humility and kuleana responsibility and like aloha, like we're here to give and not take it. We're helping that ignition and happen. So that's a little something that's been on my mind.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's incredible because I when I first got to Maui, there were certain plants and things that were pointed out to me. It was like ancient Hawaiians used to use those, or like even Hawaiians like a couple of decades ago were using those as plant medicines. Like so many plants with medicinal purposes that I think that are within a lot of people that lived from the land. It's like we all used to live from the land. And I think that so often we've removed ourselves from the land so much that we've forgotten that it does heal in that kind of way, and that there are roots towards like plant medicines, and like in every culture around the world, it's like there are roots in plant medicines, and civilizations wouldn't have lasted without those essential plants and things.
Yeah, so I think that somehow, some way, these like experiences, these allies, these medicines are helping us to come back to that. And there could be something here in Hawaii.
Nice. Well, so I guess like just kind of in closing everything, like how do you see your elemental integration like work kind of transforming as we kind of speak about plant medicines, the decriminalization of certain things, or the movement towards like this new path? Like how do you see your work transforming in that respect?
Yeah, absolutely. So I feel it will remain on a one-to-one basis and really being brought on as a part of a team. And this like transformative medicine of, we have a team of doctors here for you. We have this place. We have a very like dialed in way of dosing and getting that done. And then we have a really powerful like integration process. I think that that'll be one avenue that I come on board with a company that is starting that, and almost as like you can work with specific practitioners on your team, like taking a team-based approach, and then continuing my private practice working with clients. However, I have kind of taken a step back from that just for the next couple months. Obviously, people are welcome to reach out to me though at any time, because I'm focusing on developing in-person retreats and experiences and collaborating with a company called Sacred Waters, and we're doing leadership and medicine retreat for women.
Is there one that you have like planned already, or?
We haven't set the exact date, but it's in the work.
Very awesome.
Yeah, so I'm excited about that.
So I guess like if people did have questions, like how can they get a hold of you? Like,
yeah. The best way to reach me is through my Instagram. So that's elemental.magician, and magician's with a J. You can send me a message on there. My website is also livingart.health.
Well, Myrissa, thank you so much for being here and
Thank
talking
you,
with
Ty.
me.
It was a pleasure.
There were so many more things that I wanted to pick up on, but I'm realizing like we've been actually talking for a bit now. But yeah, I've really enjoyed this. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thanks to the listeners.
All right, so that's all for this episode. Again, you can find Myrissa at livingart.health, and you can follow her on Instagram, elemental.magician with a J. And ask her any questions that you have. If you have any thoughts or ideas about this podcast, you can join any of the social media groups: Instagram, Everything.Sun Podcast, Twitter at Every Sun Podcast, the Facebook group at Every Sun Podcast, and the YouTube page, Everything Under the Sun Podcast. You can also send an email to everythingunderthesun@gmail.com. And yeah, that's all I got. Love you all so much, and I'll talk to you soon.